What's up, guys? SparringCat, and in today's Battlecats video, I'm ranking legendary specials on a tier list by whether they are S tier or all the way down to Filibuster. But you get these legendaries from Stories of Legend, Uncanny Legends, Into the Future, Cast of the Cosmos, Empire of Cats. So throughout the game you get them, and they're all specials. Don't confuse them with legend rares. These are legend specials or legend units. But moving on to the list is, you guys probably noticed the Filibuster category right there. Well, that's not a mistake, and it's also not a mistake that's below F tier. Filibuster is the only unit on this list that is completely unusable, besides maybe Luza's first and second form. But there's just about zero opportunity to use Filibuster in any setting. He's horrible. The super long time between attacks, just the long attack animation, longest in the game. All of that coupled with absolutely horrendous stats. He's pretty much a joke, and they might as well rename him to Cheetah Cat. But after Filibuster is done, which he is now, I wanted to move on to the newest legend, which is going to be Socrates. And Socrates is only a C tier, in my opinion. Very fast time in between attacks at only 7/10 of a second. So that is very rapid fire, but very low damage and everything. What'd you expect? Inconsistent freeze against the Angels, so it does have a 30% chance of landing a 1.6 second freeze against Angels with area attack, so that looks good, but the problem is it's inconsistent, He can get a few in a row, and then it falls apart if he doesn't. But he's an inconsistent crowd controller, and his low standing range, despite his on-me strike, it is a problem. So, very excited to see him, but unfortunately not as powerful as I expected. But I do think Ponos will fix him probably in a year or two or whatever if they give him a true form, like they do with most of these guys. They make mediocre units that become good once they get a true form or some sort of a boost. But moving on from him is Valkyrie, who will join Socrates in C tier, but as a C minus, not a C. And the only reason Valkyrie isn't a D or an F is because of her usage in 4-star stages early on and her usage in Empire of Cats and Into the Future. She's used by a lot of beginners, and she's helped a lot of beginners out. But at the same time, once you pass a certain point in the game, she's very hard to pick up and use. And even if you get her up to level 40 or 50 or whatever, you try to max her out, her stats still really struggle to keep up. So she's not in D tier or F tier because a lot of players have been helped by her. Just about everybody's used her in a lineup. She's helped a lot of people win a lot of stages. But after the whole Into the Future and Empire of Cats deal, she's really taken a hit in terms of usage. Obviously having some viability in 4-star, but not overly powerful. Not that great of a unit, and the time of the game is really what gives her a passing grade. But you know who's not a mediocre unit? And I did mention his first and second form on how bad they are. But you know who isn't a bad unit? Luza. And Luza is going to go in S tier. And the reason Luza goes in S tier is because he is one of the few units of the game that has both massive damage and resilience against a target. And he's resistant to relics, and he does massive damage. He has over 400 range, and he does over 17,000 DPS from that. I mean, what else could you ask for? That coupled with hundreds of thousands of health against its effective trait, so incredibly powerful against relics, and even in a generalist setting is still a pretty decent mid-range to long-range unit. So probably a B as a generalist and a very good specialist. So bring Luza in for your bring him in against relics. He's gonna be good. And Luza won't be lonely for too long because Bahamut's gonna join in on the fun. And everybody but Luza only shows their first form, but I'm taking all the forms into account. Most of them it's just stat boosts, but Bahamut is a 2-dimensional. He's 3-dimensional in terms of the different forms. But Bahamut Cat in his first and second form might have only garnered a B, but we all know his very broken true form. I won't get into that too much, but very powerful. But when I made this video last summer, I was ranking them all on a tier list. It was a really bad ranking video. I wouldn't recommend you to see it, but That's also why I'm making this right now, because I've researched these units crap a lot more. Um, yeah, Bahamut, first couple forms is a B. It's all right. It's good in some things, bad in others. But true form, very powerful. But over that year plus time, Bahamut Cat, Awakened Bahamut Cat, not as powerful as he once seemed. There's a lot of other powerful units that are coming into the scenes, and that's always interesting to find out and see. But Bahamut still justified as an S tier, no doubt about that. Moving on is going to be Cat God, and Cat God, I'm going to put Cat God in D tier. I don't put him in F because short bases he's very good in, crazed stages he's good in, but other than that, he's almost impossible to use. I guess a few 4-star stages. Yeah, but the problem is a good ton of time in between attacks. He really can't get enemies off his back because of that. And if he gets poked by anything, he gets killed. No survivability. And his standing range is very short compared to his on me. So if you're going to use him, make sure that there's some sort of a stepping block or something, which would usually be the base. But yeah, he's good at chipping bases on. And if you bring him in short map stages, he's good. And also in his true form, if you really want to go through the trouble of getting a golden cat fruit form, he will double the money he gets. And he also gets a nice 1% health boost. Yeah, not that great. Very situational. You could make a case for him being an F or C, but I think somewhere in between that works. And Gigando, I put him in B tier last year. Now he's an A tier. And the only reason I don't put him in S tier is because of the units above him. They're just a bit better than him. But Gigando is pretty much, what the Wikipedia says about him. They called him a free Epic Fest unit. So that sums it up pretty well. And to be fair, he's very powerful against traitless enemies. He is strong against them. He has a surge. And, he's very, very powerful against them. Even in generalist lineups, his surge gives him adequate damage and DPS and crowd control abilities. But against traitless, very powerful. He's like the traitless version of Luza, but instead of massive damage and resistance, he is strong against his straight, but the trade-off is he gets a surge. So I think he's a little worse. And traitless, there's a lot more. There are a lot more options for traitless counters than there are for relics in terms of brute strength and high health, and combining that. So that's why I put him in A, because anti-traitless is more power creeped. The other end of the sword, when they mentioned Epic Fest, free Epic Fest Uber, is that Epic Fest Ubers outclass him a lot of times. But the thing is, especially in 4-star stages and stuff, he's very good. And you can't use Ubers in that. Or even if you want to use them alongside an Uber, that wouldn't be a bad idea because, as I said, very powerful. About 8,000 DPS against straightless plus a surge and 100,000 health. So not bad for a guy you kind of just throw out. Yurun, I'm going to give Yurun an A tier. Very, very good at crowd controlling and just classic. That's one of the first ones you get, and they'll be using Yurun throughout the game. And also joining Yurun in A tier is her pretty much remake of her, Urzen Fenrir, who is really just going to serve as a second Yurun, and you could interchangeably use both them. Urz has better range and everything in the true form, and the trade-off is it's easier to get Yurun's true form, and the stats are better there, but, they're both equally good in most situations. Moving on is going to be Yula. That's right, the name. Yula always gets me, the name of that. This is a little tough. But Yula did get a big buff in the true form for massive damage against relics. So that bumps Yula up to probably like a B plus. I'm trying to think because let's see, I did most of them. Yula, I thought I felt confident I was making this, but I'm gonna give Yula like a B plus. I might move him up to an A because the massive damage against relics is exactly what it needed. It needed a niche. It was a very poor generalist, and it probably would have been a D or a C if it wasn't for that. Yeah, maybe even a D. So I'm gonna put him in B plus for now. But yeah, it really needed a niche, and it got it. A perfect niche for it. There are some flaws with it, the low standing range, the high speed kind of runs into the battle there, but, you know, newfound strength, very useful. Also joining Yula on B is going to be the newly buffed Hermit Cat. Well, not newly buffed, but somewhat recently buffed. And yeah, Hermit Cat's going to get a B now. B plus. I might even put it in A, but when you just look at the guys in A tier, they're quite good. And I don't think Hermit's at that level, but a B plus for Hermit Cat. And being strong against relic enemies, once again, just like Yula and soon to be Uril. I'll bring him in a bit, but Hermit got exactly what he needed. A niche, and on top of that, instead of level 3 shockwaves, level 5 shockwaves, he can curse enemies, and he's immune to curse, so he gets a lot of different things, and I think it all helps him out a bit, and it all makes him usable. I think he's a C tier before the true form, because a lot of times he got outclassed by Jellycat, Crazed, Gross Cat, all those, and pretty much any Uber with wave attacks or any other units that were somewhat good with wave attacks. But it did have time to use, did have time to shine in 4 stars, so that wasn't too bad for him. But definitely need the true form, and very happy he got it. Next is Lil Neandum, and Lil Neandum is going to get like a B or a B minus. Pretty solid, 551 range. So the highest standing range on this list, but does not have the long range ability, so it doesn't have the longest range on the list. But the true form definitely helps it out. Without the true form, you have a lower slow chance, but more importantly, much worse stats, much less DPS, and really weak in terms of dealing damage from behind. But with the true form, the true form, it's nice for him. It wouldn't be my first priority if I'm using Elder Cat Fruit, but pretty solid. You get the full Neandum treatment. So yeah, it's just a solid backliner. It's average, but the fact is that you could bring it into 4-star stages or whatever, and that's going to be a trend with a lot of these units because they're all specials, they're all eligible, and yeah, restrictions and stuff makes them a lot more usable because there's fewer and fewer options. Moving on from Lil Neandum is Mina, and Mina's just going to get an A, another classic, and the true form is a nice touch with the weaken to relics and the improved stats, the high piercing range and everything. So Mina is just a very, very good backliner that happens to weaken relic enemies. Not much else to it, just a very solid unit. Next is going to be Musashi. And Musashi is going to be a C tier, maybe higher than these two. But the whole zombie killer thing / freeze relics, it just doesn't match it very well. The relic freeze isn't horrible, but it just doesn't feel powerful. It doesn't help a lot. It's a chance, and he attacks like every 9 seconds, and it's only 4 3-seconds. So whatever he does, it's really just a bonus at best. And Musashi is very bad against zombie enemies, so I don't understand why Ponos tried to make him a zombie specialist. But all of it really fails to address his real problems, which are his long attack animation, the 9 seconds in between, and overall just mediocre stats. The true form did improve the stats, but not enough to make it regularly usable. But I'll keep it in C tier, not horrible, maybe a C plus. Mecha Buun is going to be an F tier, and this pains me to say because Mecha Buun might be the coolest unit on this list in terms of looks. Let me know down below in the comment section who you think the coolest one on this list is. But Mecha Buun, despite the strong against relic stat boost in the true form, as well as more health and stuff, it doesn't really fix his problem. He just runs in, he pretty much punches them with a cotton fist or something. I don't know. It's like he picked up a $5 punching bag that just has like a bunch of fluff in it, and it doesn't do anything. Rushers really need to have burst damage. Think of Bahamut, he doesn't just go do his last 2 attacks and not have his first attack. Boom, 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 flick, flick. What he needs is a big punch. Look at the size of him. Look at his metal fists. He should be able to do something. But he's an incompetent attacker. He doesn't stay on the field for more than like 10 seconds. And other than Dolphinas, he really doesn't have anything he could defeat. Use slapstick cats. Next is Dagamaru, and Dagamaru is going to be put in B tier. I think he's slept on a little bit. I might put him a little higher, but he is very good as a tanker, and his first couple forms he tanks traitless, and I believe his true form he also tanks relic enemies, so that's pretty interesting. I would probably put him, yeah, he's a B plus. His weaknesses are, they do a ton of damage, those two traits, especially the latter, relics, and being a tank for them is not fun because you're going to get obliterated. But luckily, he has good base stats, and even as a generalist, isn't bad. So I might make the case that Dagamaru is one of the most slept on legend rares. That's my hot take of the day, or at least one of them. This whole list might be a hot take depending on who's watching this. All right, next is Derone, and I'm going to give Derone an S tier, and he does everything he's supposed to and more. He has the stuff like an Uber or another good unit on this list, but all at the cost of 1,800 cents. On top of that, he's just very powerful at crowd controlling. His surge is a very, 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 very nice thing to have, especially, if it all lines up with the grace of God there, with some luck. But even if it doesn't, it at least makes sure that if your army pushes up, it can still push them into that. True form, the knockback could sometimes disrupt the damage, but it's usually justified because of the knockback and the slow and everything. You really keep him at bay. But I think he's an S tier. I thought between him being an A and S, I think he's an S. He does everything he's supposed to, and he's cheap. There aren't a lot of cheap units on this list. Nala. Nala is going to go in A. I think Nala is very good on paper and still pretty good in the game, but when you saw 15,000 DPS, you can't tell me you weren't shocked the first time. Man, I always get a dry throat talking on these videos. But Nala is strong against relics, which is nice. A Colossus Slayer weakens relics, is immune to waves, curse, surge, all those things. So very optimal in terms of usage, and even a good generalist thanks to the high potential DPS and the long pierce. But her attack is like a stair range, or goes short, medium, long range, and it's not going to hit all of those shots on one enemy, but it's meant to balance it out, and it's also meant to, in stages with a bunch of enemies, you could hit all of them. So now it's going to be an A, but that is why it's not an S, because that is a bummer. 15,000 DPS would have been nuts, and obviously Ponos had to take a lot of that away to make it usable and not completely broken. Master Uril is going to get an A, and before his true form probably would have been a C tier, but thank you, Ponos, for giving him a niche, just like these other guys, giving him strong against relics, and that coupled with the crowd controlling abilities makes him a very, very powerful anti-relic unit. And yeah, so I have to say, very good at crowd controlling, and the low DPS is made up for with the surge attack. So thank you, Ponos. And last but not least, we're ending the list off easy. We have IDI, or if you guys know how to pronounce it, maybe Ida or something. But IDI is essentially Awaken Bahamut Cat on steroids against relic enemies. So, I don't know. Boom, let's put IDI right there. Very, very powerful. And against relic enemies, you don't want to be within a like in 100-foot radius of this thing, or else you're going to get evaporated, and you'll be visiting Cat God yourself. But this is my list on Legend Specials, not Legend Rares, but Legend Specials, or also formerly known as EX Specials. I remember that. Always reminds me of Pokemon. But if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It all greatly helps grow our channel. And you guys have any thoughts, leave them down below. Just make sure to keep the comment section respectful and civil. We could all agree to disagree, but let's not attack each other, Sparring Cat, signing off. Not yet. I'm just kidding. If you guys have any ideas or content ideas, anything like that, please make sure to leave it down below in the comment section. Any games you guys want me to try out, any video ideas, I'll consider it. I will read them. Not a guarantee that I'll do them, but I will read them. And it's always an honor being your Battlecats YouTuber. But Spartan Cat signing off now, and I'll see you guys in my next video.